Call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Monday, December 5th at 6 p.m. We'll now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Linda, would you take the roll call, please?
Councilman Beatty. Here. Councilman Butterball.
Here.
Councilman Carper.
Here.
Councilman Ellis.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ickes.
Here.
Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. Okay, at this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. If anybody would like to address council, you may come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 5 minutes.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. Nice to see you're here and out and about, and Merry Christmas to everybody. I come before you. I'm David Wolslago. I live at 1422 North 8th Avenue in City of Altoona, otherwise known as L.A., Lower Altoona, and Juniata. But anyhow, in that area, we have a recreation center, and I've been trying for around 10 years at least to get a flag. I'm a veteran of 33 years service in the United States military. I've been trying to get a flag put into the post that's existing. It just needs to have a pulley, it needs to have a flag, and there's a spot now for a light that's on the structure itself. Get an LED light and have a beam across to it. It doesn't need to be removed by regs. It doesn't need to be removed up and down for weather. It doesn't need to be removed night and day, just like we have Gospel Hill. It can be there 24/7. Nobody has to touch it unless it's tattered, and then it needs to be replaced. I will personally take care of that if that happens. I trust me. So that's all. I'm really coming before you to request on that behalf, and see that gets done. I had talked to Mr. Kissel this week, and he was gracious enough to call me back and did a little discussion about it, and said we'd see what could come through, and I appreciate him. He's very, very good about getting back with me. I got to be honest. We phone tagged for about 3 times, and he continued till he got me, so thank you so much. And but my other request is, I know that the Christmas parade did an outstanding job. Everybody that had that planning and did that was great. I would like to see us, and this came through from Attorney Dan Kiss. I was reading his stuff on Facebook, and he had a great suggestion. You might want to reach out and talk to him a little bit more of his ideas, but it would be great to have like several days here to have a celebration for the weekend for the businesses downtown Altoona, and have ice sculptures and fires and stuff like that, and just nice things going on, because you have Thunder in the Valley in Johnstown, you have a New Year's celebration down in State College, and this would be great for the city of Altoona to do a Christmas time and have some kind of an event like what they sort of have down at State College for New Year's Eve, and maybe extend it out into 2 or 3 days for a weekend, and help the businesses get noticed and bring up their business in downtown. So, but thank you so much, and I appreciate your time, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Dave.
Hello, my name's Autumn Temple, and I live in North Altoona, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the ordinance that you guys are going to adopt tonight, or talk about adopting tonight, in relation to increased enforcement with residential rental inspections. So I do live in the city of Altoona. I currently operate 4 single-family rentals. First, I want to applaud you guys, the city of Altoona, as well as the code enforcement office, for the jobs that you do and your attempts to do at fighting blights. I'm a landlord. I haven't always agreed with my rental inspections, but I've always been treated with respect in regards to the code enforcement office, and I'm usually there when they do the inspections. So I'm also a licensed social worker who's been in the rental, been in many rentals of city of Altoona. I absolutely understand the need for additional enforcement and inspections and everything that is done for rentals to attempt to give people habitable habitable places. There are parts of this ordinance that I agree with. I agree that, if landlords don't let you in 3 times for a rental inspection, then you don't allow them to rent. I agree that if they violate rental ordinances and you guys have to go in and abate the problem because they haven't addressed it, then they should not be allowed to rent. However, with that being said, I don't want you to lose focus on what is important. You can't win wars if you fight the wrong battles. So I do feel like the part of the ordinance that I think should be addressed is the part that says that if landlords who do not provide registration fees or required insurance and tenant documents by July 31st could get a revocation. And I truly don't understand the entire ordinance because I'm not part of the discussion, but I have 4 rentals, and I'm one of those people that don't get it in on July 31st, and I pay my late fees every year to get it registered. So if that's going to be a revocation, then those are 4 homes that are not going to be rented in the city of Altoona. And I ask you, what are you going to do with those 4 empty homes in 5 years when people, well, hopefully somebody lives there for a little bit, but if they're empty for 4 years because I'm not permitted to rent them, what are you going to do with those 4 empty homes? And how does that really address what you guys are trying to do? And I stand here as a landlord, but I'm also standing here to represent families. Unlike many landlords, I don't have $340,000 buildings that I have issues with paper stuck on wooden buildings, but I have affordable housing where I rent my 3-bedroom homes between $500 and $600. So I am here to also represent families. In the last 12 years, I have only been burnt 1 time. It was by an individual that worked at Norfolk Southern. He could have afforded affordable housing and to live elsewhere. And the reason that I'm telling you this information is because I'm one of those people that do not make that July 31st deadline for submitting the rental paperwork properly. I'm one of those people who pay late fees for submitting these documents late. So I ask you, is it worth revoking my rental license for each of these 4 properties because each year I don't submit that paperwork on time? I'm submitting it. I'm giving you the late fee that's required, and it is getting submitted. And I just feel like, there's that adage, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you're not burning houses down to get rid of spiders. And I feel like whenever you put little things in your ordinances that are maybe insignificant, then you're losing focus of where you want to be. So I suggest you look at those ordinances and really, pull out what is important to you and what isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close the floor for public comment and move on to the resolutions.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, November 14th, 2022. Item B is amending and restating the fee resolution 0130-21 attached here 2. Item C is approving the City Council meeting schedule attached here 2 for the year 2023 in accordance with the Home Rule Charter and Administrative Code of the City of Altoona. Item D is amending the 2019 CDBG program, transferring funding in the amount of $97,634.76 from the ABCD Economic Recovery Program COVID-19 program to the Nehemiah Meal Prep Program in the amount of $48,817.38 and to the Family Services Homeless Shelter Rehab in the amount of $48,817.38. Item E is awarding the request for proposal for independent auditing services for the City of Altoona for the years 2022, 3, and 4, including a financial audit of the Federal Housing and Community Development Funds, the Redevelopment Authority, and the Altoona Water Authority to Young Oaks Brown and Company, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item F is authorizing an agreement between the City of Altoona Fire Department and Cambria County Children and Youth Cambria County Administrative Office of Juvenile Court for juvenile fire setter program training, interviewing, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item G is accepting Blair County Planning Commission's proposal for professional services attached here too, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents associated with the proposal and for the city clerk to attest to same. And item H is approving the minutes of the LERTA public hearing held on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. Are there any additions or deletions, anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the consent vote. Councilman Beatty?
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Carper?
Yes.
Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes?
Yes, I must abstain from item D. I'm on the board at Family Services.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the consent vote passes 7-0. Do we read D and vote on it again, since he abstained? Okay, all right. We're gonna also now, with abstention, we're gonna vote on, I'm gonna call item D again and call for the vote. Item D is amending the 2019 Community Development Block Grant Program, transferring funding in the amount of $97,634.76 from the ABCD Economic Recovery Program COVID-19 to the Nehemiah Project and to the Family Services Homeless Shelter Rehab Project.
I have a question for the solicitor then, and does Jesse have to abstain? Because it's not, I mean, you really, I don't think that you do, because
There's
it's
no
not like there's
financial
any,
gain.
there's no financial remuneration, or you don't, it's not something you have a financial interest in. I mean, you serve on the board, and I don't know that, I'm sorry,
no,
I'm
I mean-
answering the question I'm asking you, and I
Yeah, mean,
apologize. so.
Technically, Bruce, yeah, I mean, you know, you could, if you want to operate out of an abundance of caution, that's pretty much what, when Jesse asked me why I suggested it, so,
Should I abstain because I'm on the ABCD board?
no.
Okay.
No, we're taking money from you.
Okay. I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty?
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Carper?
Yes.
Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes?
Abstain.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the vote passes 6-0. And I will have you sign an abstention statement after the meeting.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. We have ordinances for adoption. We have 7 of them. The first one was introduced by Councilman Butterbaugh. It's an ordinance of the city of Altoona.
We knew who you meant.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I apologize. The ordinance was introduced by Councilman Butterbaugh. It's an ordinance of the city of Altoona, home rule municipality in the county of Blair, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending ordinance 5707 and authorizing the financing of an amount not to exceed $4 million for the purchase of various pieces of equipment, to include pumper and ladder fire trucks, through a master equipment lease purchase agreement with Community First National Bank of Manhattan, Kansas, providing for the proper officials of the city to execute all necessary documents involved with the said purchases, repealing all inconsistent ordinances, providing for severability of provisions, and providing an effective date. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Was that Councilman Butterbaugh? Carper? Is there a second?
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Carper and seconded by Councilman Beatty. And I'll call for the vote. Councilman Beatty?
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh?
Yes.
Councilman Carper?
Yes.
Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes?
Yes.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the vote passes 7-0. No, I can't add.
Hey, I got a question. Because I thought Miss Temple really had some good points there. But I do want to clarify because I think the language in there, like you can be late and not get revoked. I'm correct on that, right?
That's
Like
correct.
it's okay if you're late. That doesn't mean an automatic revocation. Like if you're late and as long as you're communicating with somebody, it's like you'll things should be okay. Like it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Yeah, because I thought you did a really good job when you.
I'm not part of your discussion, but whenever I got a copy of the ordinance, I mean, it says
Yeah.
July 31st deadline. It doesn't
Yeah.
say with successful grace period or with conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at
Wonder
what
we
is
should
in
go through the
writing.
ordinance, 'cause
Well,
we-
that's what could happen if you just let it go, but that's not necessarily going to happen. Like if you're communicating with them and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be late," like you already did, and you're on public record, so you've already covered yourself quite well.
I get what you're saying, but
So
if it's not in writing, then
Can we ask
Yeah.
for the
Just like
clarification?
documentation, if it doesn't exist, it never happens. So if it's
Yeah.
not in writing, then
I understand your
right.
apprehension. Do you mind, you've already said that you're late. May I ask how late are you?
Usually the following, as soon as I get the notice saying, hey, you forgot this.
Okay,
I pay it.
I mean, I hate to
gotcha.
put you on the spot, but as I said, if you were gonna tell me that like you're getting it next February or something, then but I,
Can we ask for what the intent was?
So, sure, I can do that, Councilman. So the fees, obviously, by ordinance, and this has always been since, I think, 2002, when the ordinance was adopted, the fees are due by July 31st. If we probably wait about 2, maybe 3 weeks after that deadline, and we send out a reminder letter. Probably about 2 or 3 weeks after that reminder letter, we send out a final notice. Now, the latter of the two each include late fees, obviously. After that final notice, if we still don't hear anything, it goes to a summary citation. So it would be when that happens is when we revoke the license, when we would go to a summary citation. This year, for example, in October, we issued over 120 summary citations for failure to remit payment. And, some of those people, actually, some of the property owners, they'll remit payment, but they won't remit the insurance information. We have separate piles everywhere of we have this, we don't have that. We have to obviously have the full package to complete the registration process and accept payment. And again, we filed well over 100 citations that we just started having hearings on last week at Code Court. So, yeah, it's a very, very terrible process, I mean, to get that compliance. But if it does get to that point after so many notifications, then if it leads to a summary citation, that's the revocation. That's when it starts.
Okay, so the revocation starts when the citation is issued.
Correct.
Okay, so what takes place then, as far as the house is occupied, it's being rented?
So that won't change. The ordinance as it's written now, and the ordinance, those measures haven't changed. So the home is permitted to be occupied and continue to be occupied by the same tenants. If those tenants leave, and then a new tenant can't occupy the property. So they can stay there until the remainder of their lease, or until they just decide to leave, or however that would work. But no one new is permitted to rent the property.
Okay, so out of the 120-ish citations issued, how many of those were complied with?
Before the hearing date,
Yes.
probably, I want to say 60%, if not. I mean, some of them we don't have hearings scheduled yet. I mean, I think we have some into January, and actually we have some into February scheduled. I would think that they'd comply, but we still have people from last year who haven't complied and have not paid the registration fee.
Okay, so do we need to articulate that a little better in the ordinance, that if it goes a year and you haven't complied, then you get booted?
Council, I believe the ordinance as written is acceptable. Here's the thing, because right now you have to have a deadline in there, okay? and I'll be blunt, you gotta put some teeth behind this.
Right.
You know, the manner of enforcement that Rebecca just described is extremely reasonable. And I just think if you start putting further and further conditions in it, it's just, you're kind of taking the teeth out of it. That's,
Okay, maybe I didn't approach that right. I'm looking more at, she says there's ones from last year that haven't been dealt with. She's talking a year, July, you're talking the ones that came in July.
Correct, and they're revoked now.
2021,
Yes, and they are revoked.
and they still have not been complied.
Correct.
Okay. Do we need to put more teeth, that's the ones I'm addressing. Do we need to put more teeth into those people to get them out of the business of being landlords because they're not complying with what we're doing?
Well, I did put a provision here about anybody who has 2 or more rental licenses revoked are not permitted to rent anything for a period of 5 years. So we do see, and I will tell you that most times it occurs with 2 or more properties. It's not just one property. It would be several with one owner.
Yeah, look, I'm not here to disencourage people to have rental properties, but we need to address these people that are coming in here and taking advantage of not only the rental system that you have in place, but the entire community. Because my guess is those same people you have on other lists as far as blight and other compliance issues, correct?
Correct.
Okay. They're the people we need to start targeting and get them either to comply or move on.
Yeah, agreed.
So, Rebecca, I think what you described as your office's policy
Mm-hmm.
addresses Ms. Temple's concern. The
Absolutely.
the grace period that you provide. Can I ask? Is that written into an is that policy written, or is that your office's informal policy?
It's actually our policy. I mean, it's our informal policy, but I mean, we often have people come to us the day before the deadline and say, hey, you know, I'm running behind or financially. I mean, we always give somebody, especially if somebody's reaching out to us, there's always a flag put in there that, you know.
And I don't doubt that at all. I think it might be worth having a conversation to write that down, to make that less of an informal policy and more of a formal, if you're late on this, if you're late, then this happens. Then if you're still late, then this happens. Just so that that's not discretionary, because there will come a time when there will be a transition. 20 years from now, if there's a different codes officer, there's no way to know for sure how that would be enforced. I guess is what I'm saying.
Are you saying you'd like to see the policy in writing?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry to dance around.
No, that's okay. I knew there was something in there. I just.
I'm sorry.
Any concerns with that, making more of a more formal policy?
I like the ordinance as it's written, it's been presented here. Okay, the enforcement side of it, I think what Rebecca's doing is appropriate. I can tell you, when you get to the point of a citation with any of these district justices, they're gonna be looking to, well, what efforts have been made? Has there been an effort to work this out? That sort of thing. So, what the codes office has been doing, quite frankly, is what they're gonna wanna see at the district justice level to begin with, so.
I will say, when we end up at court, the district justices want to see all of the letters that we have sent with dates. So we have to produce those documents. What was the initial invoice sent? When was the, reminder sent? I'd like to see the late fees assessed. So those are all documented and have to be submitted at the court level. I mean, and at that time, I do know, even at the court level, if somebody attends the hearing and says, I just forgot or something, I mean, it's dismissed. They're able to pay that day, and submit their required information. So, I mean, we definitely go through quite a bit to get to that point. I mean, obviously, it has worked, but you're right. I mean, we still have people out there that haven't paid, and it's been, And we don't have many. I wouldn't say there may be a half a dozen.
So I guess what my question is, once you get to that point and they have a tenant move out, do they have to notify you that somebody's moving back in? Or how do you know that a tenant changes?
They are to notify us by the tenant registration forms. So anytime occupancy changes, we have to receive an updated tenant registration form. And it lets us know the occupancy, anyone over 18, we have to have the names of the tenants.
Okay.
I think we should let him ask his question. If it's okay with you guys.
As a landlord myself, I
Yeah.
have several properties in the city, and I pay for the same thing. Do you work with Section 8 to stop Section 8 whenever, or, forbid them from renting whenever they don't pay that if you have tenants on Section 8?
I'll be honest, we have no communication or anything with Section 8 at all.
Well, that might be a thing for the council to do, is talk to the Altoona Housing Authority and have them put that on there, that they need to show the license whenever they go for the renewal every year, that they have to produce that license to them. Because I know I have a few Section 8 tenants, and I have to produce my taxes and et cetera to them to show that. And that would be just another one, because this is a government entity, and they're paying the people for living there, and that's just another form of them to keep them paying the people that need to. Personally, I like the program just on the standpoint because it helps me with liability if somebody were to come forward. I've had professionals come in and inspect the property, the city coming in and looking it over. So, but anyhow, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, when we do these ordinances, like, we have a lot of really excellent landlords, like the ones that have spoken tonight, but a few bad apples spoil the bunch, and we got some landlords that are just horrible that need to get out of this town, and they're running slums, and they're just making more of a blight problem, and we have some landlords that they'll predominantly rent knowing a lot of drug dealing is involved, and that needs to go. It just needs to go, and anything we could do to help get rid of these people helps. And it also helps the good landlords. It creates a better environment for you and for all the neighbors involved.
So I think I support the ordinance tonight as it's written to give the department what it needs to move forward. I would certainly entertain in the future a more formalized policy in terms of how you handle when people are late, because I think when you leave that up to discretion, I mean, I don't think we should leave it up to discretion.
I think we have to give the department heads
Yeah.
the ability to make these kind of calls. I am concerned a little bit about that not being formalized a little bit more, but it sounds like it's a workable thing. I'm gonna ask both landlords, is that something that seems workable, that what you described here tonight?
My issue is this, like you said, don't leave room for discretion. I'm a landlord, you're not gonna revoke me, I mean, honestly. If you follow the policy that you explained, I'm not getting revoked. However, if I'm one of those landlords that you described that you wanna get out of town, realistically, based on this ordinance on August 1st, you can revoke me, because it doesn't say that if you haven't paid by July 31st and we sent you 3 letters and completed to the city or to the magistrate to give you a whatever citation or whatever you call it, because I don't get them, then you're going to be revoked. So, I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, we appreciate that.
We appreciate
No.
you coming in and pointing that out.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
just
really
so I
what
can
I'm-
clarify something too, we're not looking to push people out of town.
Oh,
What
yeah.
we're looking to people to invest, but to invest properly and have pristine properties here. Those people that don't choose to do that, then we have no problem putting on the first boat out of here, so.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't, I mean, with D, you said reinspection after 3 times they don't show up. So in B, then could you put, documents by the July 31st deadline and whatever your magistrate thing, your 2 notices magistrate. At the point that you have to take me to a magistrate, then I should be revoked before I even go to the magistrate. Because I haven't paid, registration. I haven't paid attention to the warning letter. I didn't pay attention to the second warning letter, so then revoked. But the July 31st, as it is written, in black and white, is exactly that. Just like the city of Altoona or the water authority has a termination notice clause, they send their letters out all day long to your landlords, and they don't shut the water off because there's no intention. So your B is, if you don't register by July 31st, we don't really care. We're gonna send you 3 other notices and see you in court, and then you get a revocation. Basically, that's what you're saying, and it's not in writing.
Do our other ordinances that involve codes, do they spell out the procedure for, let's say, overgrowth, how you go out, you inspect it, you send a reinspection letter? That's all defined by what's required by state law to take somebody to court, to the magistrate, and have it stick in court, correct? Tom? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't have like, okay, well, you get this much time and these many notices and everything. I'm just telling you, it's like from a practical standpoint, by the time you get to issuing a citation, going to the magistrate wants to see like, okay, well, were you aware how,
Did you give them proper notification, proper
I'm
time to
just-
fix the problem?
I'm just telling you, that's, yeah,
And-
so,
and
and
the-
if you
and the
try to
more we-
start legislating every one of these scenarios,
Yeah, it's impossible.
it's
And by
impossible.
and to the point, probably from the magistrate. Now, I mean, I'm not familiar with the process, but I would imagine that the more opportunities you've given someone in the past to correct the action, when you go before the court, that's probably going to be favorable in getting something handled. So, frankly, I mean, there has to be parameters on this that allow for some type of enforcement to take place. I mean, I think we need to adopt this tonight, and that's how I feel about it. I get people's concerns, but I mean, we have to be able to have some leg to stand on. We're not going to be able to legislate all of these circumstances.
So I'd just like to point out that to avoid any of these problems, all you need to do is make sure you have this in place by July the 31st, which is actually what is supposed to happen. And if you go beyond that, I mean, you're really leaving it up to the administrative process. What Rebecca's talking about is what the administrative process we go through. Your question, Councilman Ickes, about, I believe it was you, or maybe it was you, Mayor, that was talking about, do we have administrative processes written into these ordinances? Well, we don't. And what our department does is actually bend over backwards in many ways to accommodate the people that have issues along the way. And I don't think we want to legislate administrative processes.
agree.
Yep, same.
Thank you.
I will say too, that holds true for any fee or registration
Yeah.
that we collect. So that would be for a mechanical device fee, for these contractors' licenses. I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios that will happen, but I mean, from an administrative standpoint, the rental program is the most nightmarish, I should say, when it comes to that time. But this holds true for all of those. A phone call or some kind of communication solves a lot of the problem, but ignorance of the entire process doesn't. So that's really what we're dealing with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Linda.
Okay, the second ordinance was introduced by Mayor Pacifico, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 570-11, Administration and Enforcement of the Altoona City Code with respect to residential rental inspection, and to provide for additional enforcement and administration provisions regarding revocation and reinstatement of conditional housing permits and residential rental licensing. Is there a motion for adoption?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Vice Mayor Ickes and seconded by Councilman Ellis, and I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 7-0. The next ordinance was introduced by Vice Mayor Ickes, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 270, Construction Standards, Article 2, Building Construction, Sections 270-7 through 270-10, and Article 3, Plumbing Standards, Section 270-11 of the Altoona City Code, to provide provisions for permit renewals, annual permits, work before permits, and appeal fees, and to reaffirm the remainder of Chapter 270. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Butterbaugh and seconded by Councilman Beatty. Now call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly, Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the vote passes 7-0. The next ordinance was introduced by Councilman Ellis, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona which amends and replaces Chapter 647 of the City of Altoona Code, Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance, and enacts a new ordinance pursuant to the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act and the Improvement of Deteriorating Real Estate or Areas of Tax Exemption Act, establishing tax exemptions for real property located within the deteriorated areas of the City of Altoona designated by local municipalities, and providing for the implementation thereof, including the contingency of adoption of concurrent legislation by other affected taxing bodies. Is there a motion for adoption?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Beatty and seconded by Vice Mayor Ickes. And I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico.
Yes.
And the vote passes 7-0. The next ordinance was introduced by Councilman Ellis, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends and replaces Chapter 470 of the Altoona City Code as it pertains to noise, to provide definitions, outline applicability and exemptions, provide enforcement procedures and penalties, provide severability of provisions, repealer, and provide an effective date. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Butterbaugh, seconded by Councilman Ellis, and I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly, Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 7-0. The next ordinance was introduced by Councilman Beatty, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 646-25, discount and penalty for payment of real estate taxes of the Altoona City Code with respect to real estate taxes levied and assessed in the City of Altoona to provide a potential waiver of additional charges beyond the face value amount of real estate taxes for new homeowners beginning in the 2023 tax year pursuant to Pennsylvania Act 57 of 2022. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
This ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Carper and seconded by Councilman Butterbaugh, and I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 7-0. And last but not least, we have an ordinance which was introduced by Councilman Butterbaugh, and it's an ordinance of the City of Altoona and the County of Blair, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, appropriating specific sums estimated to be required for the specific purposes of the municipal government hereinafter set forth during the year 2023, and better known as the 2023 budget ordinance. Is there a motion for adoption?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And this ordinance was moved for adoption by Councilman Beatty and seconded by Councilman Butterbaugh, and I will call for the vote. Councilman Beatty,
Yes.
Councilman Butterbaugh,
Yes.
Councilman Carper,
Yes.
Councilman Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ickes,
Yes.
Councilman Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico,
Yes.
and the vote passes 7-0.
Okay, that didn't take long.
Good job, Linda.
We'll move on to city manager updates now. Omar?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Well, now that you've just adopted the budget, I just want to let you know that we'll be getting that out, a final version of the adopted budget, very similar to what we did last year, will be coming to you in the next week or so. Also wanted to remind everybody that we've received the parking study for the downtown, which we had a presentation of an update, I guess, last month. We're going to get Mr. Getz to come back in and go over what he considers to be the final version, or
Will
the
that be-
draft version, so that we can maybe make, if you can recommend any suggestions as to what you would like to see, perhaps that can be done in the January meeting that he attends.
Will he be coming to our January work session?
I
what
can,
your
I
plan
can
is?
do, probably try to get him to either the regular meeting or the work session. If you prefer the work session, we can certainly do that. Probably open to more discussion, generally speaking, at that. So, yeah. As you know, we had a Christmas parade last week downtown. I think it was well-attended and well-received. I know that we took a little bit of a hit on social media for the cleanup afterwards. I think that's because perhaps it wasn't fit into the planning process, or there were, it was a kind of a breakdown in communications there. But I did go downtown Saturday. It looked great. It was all cleaned up, and I think we did great work on that. Also want to let you know that we'll be rolling out the next round of the business district revitalization grants sometime towards the end of January. We will have a much, I shouldn't say a much different process, but a different process, a different form, and I'll go over those with council in January before we release that, and we will obviously get that out and advertised in the public well in advance of our actions. I just want to confirm that with you. The last thing I'd just like to leave you with, as we head into the new year, one of the themes that I'm going to be pushing with our senior leadership team and with the organization in general is to try to approach the processes of city operations more systematically and more programmatically. And by what I mean by that is systematically, I think, kind of speaks for itself, rather than doing something here and something different over in some other different section of the city, and based on purely on input from individuals. We're going to look at looking at things from a systematic basis, and from that systematic basis will flow programs that we roll out. And I will obviously be talking about that in the new year, but I just wanted you to be aware of that's something that's really been heavy on my mind, and it's something that we'll be talking to all the team about and moving forward with in the new year. That's all I have.
Thank you, Omar. Move on to council discussion. Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to, Omar, thank you and the staff for the hard work on the budget. To be able to put together a budget without a tax increase is a good thing, particularly given the economic times that we're in. So I thank you and the staff for that. I like your idea about the programming and the systematic approach to that. I think it's, I asked you at a budget meeting in your career here at the city, how many fewer positions do we have now compared to when you started? And I'm trying to remember the answer you gave us.
Many fewer.
Yeah, many fewer. Yeah, which is true, and I've seen that. So we're have everybody trying to do more with less, and it's tough sometimes to, the old adage. It's tough to remember that the objective is to drain the swamp when you're up to your backside in alligators and trying to do everything. So thank you to you and the staff for that. And again, I just want to echo the comments about the Christmas parade. It was great to be in the parade and look out and see the crowd A little chilly, but, you know, nothing we can do about the weather, but it really was very well attended, and that was a really nice thing for our community, so. That's all I have, Mayor. Merry Christmas to everyone, and a blessed New Year.
Councilman Carper?
I just echo the comments about the job on the budget. Thank you for all the work that you put into it. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Councilman Butterball?
Yeah, I thought this year brought a lot of good, positive change throughout the city, and just want to commend all involved, all the department heads and staff and everyone for really stepping up and rising to the occasion, and just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Councilman Nickes?
Thank you, Mayor. Quick year, seems like. Last couple of years primarily, but I have to say that I think this has been the year where I've felt probably the most involved, and I know that I spent 2 years in like this COVID fog in municipal government, it felt like. But obviously this year I feel we had a lot of accomplishments, a lot of which was directed around the ARPA dollars that we got from the federal government and how we're making those plans to disseminate those funds from personnel changes to approving contracts. Just really appreciate all the staff's work. I do want to thank Ms. Temple for coming forward this evening and expressing her concerns and part of the civic process. But most importantly, I appreciate you also sharing good experiences you've had with our staff. Not always necessarily the outcome you wanted. However, I really appreciate that you show respect and courtesy to our staff in the codes department. They have tough jobs, not enough of them to accomplish always what we need, but I just really appreciated that. So wishing everyone a happy and healthy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. On to 2023.
Councilman Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor. I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I too agree with some of my colleagues. I think when you look back over the year, we've accomplished quite a bit. The ARP money, it's always nice when you have money. It seems like you get more accomplished when you have money. So I think that helped. The stormwater thing, I think, has been a great accomplishment in the city, getting all those different projects in place and getting them, the ones that weren't done this year, ready to go next year. All good stuff. And you know, when you look back, we got the McCrory's building sold, and we got a new roof on it, and it's moving forward. And that's something that was, you know, a year ago when I came here was an albatross around our neck. So, and you know, the work that was done on the getting the lots into the land bank and all that, working together, getting those building lots together is building a base for the future. So, I think a lot of great things are in store, and I also appreciate the work that was done on the budget to get this in under without a tax increase. But you know, we all know in years to come that we're going to have to address that, and I think that's as important as that the people get to understand that we're going to have to deal with that in years to come. And I firmly believe that we are working and getting a lot accomplished with a very limited staff to do that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Councilman Beatty?
I just wanted to say thank you for the citizens of Altoona for giving us the opportunity to serve. Ms. Temple, thank you for coming in. It's always good to hear from landlords who help us to fund city services by providing a needed service to the people that need to rent property. And Dave, you also, thanks for coming in, giving us an update on the flag. And that brings me, and I also want to thank Omar for bringing up about coming up with a new process for streamlining actions that we take as a city. But I wanted to share an email that I sent to the mayor and the councilman, and this was 2 weeks ago. I would like to suggest we set up a process for ensuring the completion of requests that we make of the city manager and department leaders. After 10 months on council, I find that requests that I have made for action by the city workforce are not followed through to completion. We are elected to serve the people of Altoona and to address the concerns that they bring to us as well as our ideas to improve the city. I am told that there is software available within the city IT department to accomplish this. Any request that we make should go through the city clerk and be entered into the system with a 24-hour response required, and then stay active with weekly responses from the department heads until it's closed. Ron Beatty. I really think the city's at a point where if we're going to accomplish things as council, we need to have a clear way to track requests that we make through the system. And I think that would be good in any department that we have, is that we develop a framework where concerns that come to the city have a clear path and that it is reported whenever it doesn't complete. So if we have somebody call into codes, we have a 24-hour window for them to get back to them. If we don't get back to them then, there's a process for it moving to the city manager. If it doesn't get addressed, then it moves to city council. And I think that would be a very solid way to ensure progress as we move forward. Altoona has to get organized if we're going to be successful, and whether that's the RA acquiring properties or tearing down blighted properties, you know, their organization is the best way to complete tasks that you start. And I would like to see that move forward in the new year. And Merry Christmas.
All right, questions from the media. Bill?
Thank you. Omar, I didn't understand, or at least maybe not until Ron talked, what you meant by a more systematic way of dealing with issues. Is what Ron said what you're talking about, or?
Not exactly, but I think we're not off base in addressing things systematically. I think what Councilman Beatty talked about was a systematic approach to addressing council complaints, and I certainly, we're all looking to make what we do better and do it better, and sometimes, you know, taking input from other people is a good thing, and I certainly think that. But what I mean is that rather than, you know, addressing one thing in the city in a certain way and maybe a different way because of a complaint, that we look at things to do them more systematically. And I'm thinking we're in the process, for example, to give an example of this, we're in the process of surveying the sidewalks and curbs in the city. So at some point in the future, when we've gone through the process, we'll be able to rate those sidewalks and curbs very much like we do the roadways in the city. And then we can take steps towards repairing those based on need and based on resources available. But we will know what's the worst ones, what are the best ones, where to do that, not just a kind of a hodgepodge approach. So that's I think an example of a systematic way that from that will flow a program for repairing sidewalks and curbs. So that's I think a pretty good example of what I was talking about.
Okay, thanks. Would anybody care to comment on Dave Wolfslegel's suggestion about a Christmas celebration, a multi-day Christmas celebration in the city?
Yeah, Bill, I think all of us up here, and the staff included, realize that we're missing a lot of opportunities to bring people into our community. And I believe it's going to be addressed next year that there's going to be someone on staff that's going to help to create those type of environments. Unless I'm wrong, I don't believe any of the parades are planned by anyone on staff at the city. They're all done by different groups around the city.
I think you're right.
And we need to take ownership of some of that stuff. When you look around at some of these other communities, there's a lot of things going on in their communities on the weekends and summer weekends, winter weekends, whatever, to draw people in. And we have some things that that have a lot of history here in Altoona, they could be natural draws to that kind of thing. And I think it's an absolute tremendous idea, and I think once we get someone on staff here, we can sit down and figure out where we want to go with that.
Is this person that's going to be on staff, will that be the full-time responsibility for that person, or?
It's going to be in community development. Omar's in charge of day-to-day operations, so I'd rather defer to him.
Yeah, so it's going to be a community engagement person in the community development department. That's only going to be part of their job, and it's really designed to kind of get the city more involved in some of these activities and enhance the environment for the downtown and throughout the city to the degree that we can.
Are you contemplating like taking over for GADEC for the Christmas parade and from the veterans organizations for the Veterans Day parade, that sort of thing, or just
No,
add other stuff?
I would
to-
think we would coordinate better with them, when there's somebody that can actually work with them directly, rather than, kind of around the edges. Basically assigning someone to facilitate and plan and that sort of thing.
It's very odd, Bill, the way that we do events and stuff here. Like most municipalities, the municipality is involved with organizing and planning those events, but that's not the case here. Like we rely on volunteer groups that put on just about everything without very much city involvement. So that wouldn't change, but we would just have a little bit more city involvement going forward.
You mean to like enhance the experiences?
Yeah, pretty much like Omar just said.
Yes, so we're not looking to take over the Christmas parade or the Veterans Day parade. I mean, the organizations responsible for that do a fine job. But case in point, Omar made a comment about the trash collection after the parade. That's something that, having somebody that's looking at events can help better coordinate so that we maybe don't miss something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could help organizations and groups that want to do things and help facilitate them and make their idea for an event come to fruition.
Okay. Does anybody, I know it's kind of old news in a way, but the budget, any comments on that? There is no tax increase, correct?
That is correct.
Budget?
Correct.
Anybody care to say anything about it?
Merry Christmas, no tax increase.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, Rebecca, if a landlord gets a rental license revoked, the tenants can remain until the end of the lease. Can they renew a lease, or is it done when their lease is over? The current lease is over, then they're done.
When their current lease is finished.
Okay. And you were saying about when a landlord loses their rental license, they're prohibited from renting for some number of years, and I forget, or I didn't catch how many years.
If they lose two different rental licenses, if they're revoked for two different properties that they own, then they would be prohibited from renting to anybody and obtaining any rental licenses for a period of 5 years.
Okay. Well, if they have two revoked, and they have like 3 other properties, does that mean they can't rent those properties either, or they continue?
They can't rent those properties either
Oh, so if you get 2, then you get it all, basically?
for 5 years.
Okay.
Rebecca, just for reference, what is the fee for? No, for the rental license. Just
The rental license fees are $60. They'll actually increase for 2023. For the past, I believe, 12 years, they've been $50 each for the first 4 units and $15 for each additional unit. For 2023, they'll go to $60 each for the first 4 units and $20 for each additional unit. The reinstatement fee, I believe, is $150 for the
a lot cheaper to pay it up front, wouldn't it?
for the revocation. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is for Tom. Is there a distinction to be made between what's in an ordinance, like was passed today, and what's in an administrative policy?
You could say that, Bill. I think what I'm alluding to is anytime you're dealing with enforcement of an ordinance, particularly matters of this type, and Rebecca can confirm this, when you get to the point where you're issuing a citation and you're appearing before a district justice, it's not. I mean, this is more of a practical aspect of it. It's more than just, okay, you're in violation of the black letter language of the ordinance. It's, well, how have you been notified? How many times? Have you been given an opportunity to address this issue? If you're in a situation where you're going to sit there and the clock strikes midnight on August 1st and you're issuing citations for not having everything in line, I'm just here to tell you not too many district justices are going to look kindly upon that. So it's there's the practical effect of it when you're trying to administer this. It's an application of, you have to apply common sense. So.
Well, when Joe was talking about being more comfortable with a written policy, not necessarily in an ordinance is what I took from that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you suggesting, or Rebecca suggesting, that not having a written policy gives you more flexibility and it's actually better that way?
I was saying you can't legislate every scenario in an ordinance. That's what I was alluding to.
Right.
Okay.
But do you have an opinion about an administrative policy that would be written as opposed to one that's not?
I mean, at this juncture, I think the manner in which Rebecca outlined how they've been handling things, as long as it's done on a consistent basis, I think it's been effective and I think it's been working. If that's to be reduced to something in writing, I mean, that's fine. It's just looking for consistency. And I think that our codes department has been using common sense and applying it consistently.
Bill, taxes are due to the federal government by April 15th. There's no negotiating with them. Here, if we're aware of an issue that someone's running into, there's the ability for leniency as long as administration's aware of an issue taking place.
Should we consider, just to throw this out there, maybe since we did this ordinance, giving a notice like a month in advance? Hey, by the way, coming up on July 31st is the deadline.
We actually send invoices.
Oh, okay.
July 31st, they go out the first week of June.
Oh, okay.
So our notifications,
Good.
2022 or, 2023 rental invoices now due and payable by July 31st. You can pay this way, that way. If you need forms, contact us. We send a letter and it goes out. So the first notification actually is sent the first week of
So
June.
we already have one layer of
Correct.
notification before anything's even coming close.
Right.
Oh, well, good. There we go. Well, that made my season jollier.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Meeting is adjourned.